What makes a great leader? Is it certain personality traits or skill sets? A job title? Something you're born with? At Impact, we change the narrative on leadership by reframing it as a special type of action. And this action can emerge from anyone at any time. What matters is that it moves the situation or the group forward. To explore this in more depth, I was joined by Impact's global practice lead and one of the creators of our leadership model, Maggie Pearce. Hi Maggie, how are you?
Hey Dan, I'm good.
Good, excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining me today to talk all about this topic. So first of all, maybe let's give our audience to get the chance to know you a little bit better. So why don't you tell us about yourself in 60 seconds, if you can?
I'm a senior consultant at Impact. I work with all sorts of different clients. I also get involved in some of our complex design work. And over the years, I've developed some of our thinking and processes such as solution mapping, how we kind of design and understand their clients' needs, and also some of our tools like around teams and leadership. I've been here a long time, 30 years, but it's not just a lack of imagination. I've worked, apart from finance, I've worked or been involved in all of the different functions within Impact. So that I've kept it interesting and keep moving. Yeah,
for sure. And I've seen you with a wealth of experience over the time, which I'm very excited to sort of tap into some of that experience today. So let's do just that. So why don't we first of all give a bit of a high level as to what we're talking about when we mean what we mean when we're talking about leadership as action. How would you introduce that normally?
So I'd start by saying that often people come at leadership by looking at someone who they see as a good leader and then trying to reverse engineer what they see them doing. So what are their characteristics and traits? And if I can do that, then I can be good like them. The trouble with that is nobody can do that and remain authentic, and we can spot someone who's inauthentic immediately. And then the other thing is there's no general agreement about what these characteristics and traits are. The more you read about it, often they're even contradictory. So we come at it another way and we say, well, what is it that a leader is doing? What action are they providing? And we focus on the moment of it rather than what do they do over time. It's in a moment, what are they doing? And so with that, we've come up with a way of thinking, which is it's about noticing that something's missing, deciding what's missing, and are you in a good position to act? Then having the courage to kind of step in, take action, and then reflect, was it effective? Go again, go round and round. The more you notice, decide, act, the more you're moving things on, you're providing leadership action.
And that's what's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, as we mentioned in the intro, that then opens leadership to come from that traditionally a special type of person. Often people think of a leader as a person, and with this approach, from what I understand, it opens that so that it's accessible to more people, and therefore leadership can and maybe should come from anywhere in the business. Is that right?
It is. And I think sometimes what stops people acting is they don't want to put their hand up, because then they're like, oh gosh, if I say something, then everybody's going to look to me because I'm putting my hand up and saying I'm the leader. And it's not that. I think of it like a spotlight. So you've noticed something that's going wrong. So we're in a group situation and we're all talking at cross purposes. You've noticed that. So you say, what's missing here? Well, there's no clarity about what we're trying to do. So you step into the spotlight and you say, I've noticed that we're all talking at cross purposes. I don't think we have a clear agenda. That took courage because the group was trundling along in one direction. So it took courage. You stepped up, you said something. It pauses for everybody and we think about it and go, yeah, you know what? That's right. So what are we trying to do here? Meanwhile, you've stepped back out of the spotlight. You haven't taken over. You're not down the leader now. You've just kind of corrected course to some extent. You reflect on that, notice, did it make a difference? Yeah. And then go back to noticing. It's a muscle that you just practice, and the more you do it, the more you'll be seen as providing leadership. I think it's like happiness. I can say to you, be happy, but you can't just be happy. Leadership is like that. There are things you have to do. So in the happiness, what makes me happy is ballet. I don't think that would make you happy. I don't know. Maybe I'm jumping to conclusions there.
No, I think you'd be accurate.
So leadership is the same in that
Yeah.
you can't just do leadership. What you're doing is you're helping a situation by noticing what's needed, taking action. And sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes you step back and go, oh, nobody listened, or actually that wasn't needed.
Doesn't mean
But then you go again and you go again.
Yeah. Well, let's get a really specific, or try to get a really specific scenario. So, is there any stories you can share of when you've either observed this happen really well or not worked out so well? Is there any sort of examples that you can share?
Yeah, well, let's take the three things that tend to be missing when a group comes together, and they're meaning, value, and structure. So meaning, we talk about clarity, and there was an example I gave already just about, we're all talking at cross purposes, and what's needed there is someone to bring that to the attention of the group, and then, the group then say, well, let's focus on this. Value is about valuing and including people. So some leadership action there would be, you're noticing that there's a quieter member of the group whose voice isn't being heard, or their contribution isn't being valued, and you do something to bring them in. And it might be, hey, I've noticed that Dan's, not been listened to, or he said something 3 times and everybody's ignored him. Or it might be that we haven't heard from everyone. So an action there could be, why don't we pause and just quickly get an input from everybody just to hear where everyone's at on this. So that would be around value. And then structure is when things are just going off track, there's confusion about who's doing what, or time is moving too quickly and things aren't getting done. You might say, look, we've got all of this data to analyse, rather than have all 10 of us be like a 9-year-old football team racing around after the ball. Why don't we say, you look at that, I'll look at this, and we'll come back together in 10 minutes and we'll share what we've got. So you're structuring to help bring the group on track. So having in your mind meaning, value, structure makes it easier, because then you're noticing what's missing. But there is a point on noticing, and then you're noticing both inwardly and outwardly, which sounds a bit weird, but often you're aware that things are missing because of how you feel. You might feel frustrated, not engaged, bored. So we notice what's going on for you. That might be a trigger for then saying, well, what might be going on externally? And then look outside as well. So everything starts with noticing both internally and externally. Then what is missing?
So what about we talked about value in terms of a particular scenario there, but what does this approach, where's the value of this approach versus, I guess, traditional leadership, the way we would normally think about it?
Yeah. Well, I think it accesses all the brains in the room. If you've got one person saying, follow me, you've got one brain, which may be brilliant, but you've got lots of other people who could contribute who aren't contributing. So I think it distributes the opportunities. Sometimes when I talk to clients about this, you get pushback where they say, well, I don't know whether I want that level of, people taking over and everybody's a leader. We're not saying everyone's a leader. We're saying everyone is able to contribute. The leader, the formal leader, still remains the leader. It's not a manifesto for anarchy. It's opening up opportunities for people to notice, decide and act.
Yeah. It sounds like there's quite a lot of skills that are required for this to work as best as it can. So what advice can you give to leaders who are maybe watching or listening to this, that what would be like the first thing that they could either go and do or try to kind of develop their skills in this, and to have this approach?
I think next time you're going to be with a group of people, whether it's in a team meeting or you're working on a project, or it might be something outside of work, you're part of a committee, for instance, start with noticing. What are you noticing going on? And to do that, you have to remain present and focused on what's going on. And so maybe take the pressure off yourself. The first time, say, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to notice and come away from it thinking, what did I notice? What was going on? What was the dynamic? Then next time think, right, I'm going to do something. So you've noticed what's missing, and you've noticed not acting on something that happened last time. It's got to be in the moment. What's missing right now, and then say or do something that's going to change pace, focus, or direction.
Right.
I think sometimes when we talk about leadership action, people start to assume that everything is leadership action, when sometimes it's just being a good team member, or it's just So I think of it, if everything is sort of trundling along, you need good management for that to happen. When you want a turn or a stop or a refocus, that's what takes courage, because you're actually stopping the bus and saying, stop. I think we need to do something. And that is leadership action, as opposed to, Dan's great. He just does things. He helps things along. He bought the donuts, or he's really cheery. I like having Dan in the team. That isn't leadership action.
Yeah.
But you noticing that other members of the team aren't being engaged and doing something to bring them in is Dan being nice, but actually providing leadership action as well.
Yeah, that's a great way of summarising it. And if you can think of any... Is there any stories that you can maybe share where you've seen or you've maybe worked with groups over the years where you've worked with a group about this, and then, I don't know, 6 months, 12 months later, you've sort of seen the, I guess, positive, hopefully, effects of that? Have you got any stories to share there?
I think not so much stories about the moment, because there's lots of moments, but I think the stories that people are sharing tend to be about it being liberating, that they can say something, whereas before they noticed that things were going wrong but didn't feel that they could act because it felt like too big a leap.
Right.
So the fact that you can do something and it's appreciated, and then they're recognizing that it had an effect. And then the sense of risk reduces. And once you see that you're doing something and it's having an effect, you do more of it. And so often when I go back to work with teams that I've worked with before, they say it's actually okay for people to say things now, whereas before we didn't want to.
Yeah.
And so, people are more willing to say things and take action, and that's where it's valuable.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, Maggie, thank you very much. I feel like we've already learned a lot there, and I feel like we could open up a whole load of extra questions, but we are running out of time, sadly. So before I let you go, I would like to ask you the question that we always ask our guests at the end of every episode, which is a bit more of a personal question. And that's, knowing what you know now, looking back on your career, what advice, if any, would you give your younger self?
So I have a really good friend who often says, when things don't go well or circumstances change and you're just like, this is rubbish, he just says, okay, let's work with what we've got. And it sounds really simple, but I've found that has been a really useful thing. And I tell my younger self to start doing that earlier. When things don't go well, you can spend time stressing about it or wishing it were another way. But the minute you go, oh, okay, this is the situation, it's that much more positive. It brings people with you, and it then switches on the creative part of your brain.
Yeah.
So none of the luggage has showed up. The group are arriving in 5 minutes. Okay, what are we going to do? We're not going to sit there and moan about it. We're going to do something. And I found that to be exceptionally useful, and I think that's something I do daily. Well,
I was just about to say, do you it's advice you give your younger self, but do you live by that now?
I do. I was told this many years ago, and I adopted it there and then. At first, I thought, what a strange thing to say. It seems quite odd, and simple, and it is.
Yeah.
And it's just, lean in, do something, because moaning about it or looking for someone to blame isn't useful, doesn't move you on.
No, it's very true.
Makes you better company, I think, in those situations.
I'm sure that's very true. Well, Maggie, thank you ever so much for giving us your time and your wealth of experience and knowledge on the subject of leadership as action. So that just leaves me to say that thank you once more to Maggie. And if you would like to look at our back catalogue of these episodes, then you'll find all the links that you need near where you found this episode. So thank you once more to Maggie for joining me today.
Oh, and thanks for having me, Dan.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of In Good Company. If you would like to find out any more about Impact or the work we do, or perhaps you'd like to explore our leadership playbook, then you'll find all of the links that you need in the description of where you found today's episode. So thank you very much for tuning in, and until the next time, take care.